It all starts with fear. Fear is the path to anger. Anger is the path to hate. Hate is the path to suffering. That is the paved road to the dark side. But where does fear come from? What if your fears stem from your own actions? What if the consequences of your actions bring you to anger? What if you only hate what you have become? What if you suffer in silence from within, and admitting to your suffering is the difference maker between freeing yourself from your fear, but destroying everything you've created in the process? The hardest battles are often against ourselves, and that battle is intensified when we become our own enemies. We would be honored if you would join us. Hello and welcome back to the Darth Magog channel. I'm your host, the Dark Lord of the Apostates, Darth Magog. Over the years, we've painstakingly analyzed, dissected, and scrutinized the Jehovah's Witness religion, whether it was through child psychology, the lens of other fictional religions, or even the first-hand accounts of individuals who have lived the Jehovah's Witness lifestyle and survived to tell the tale. Today, we're going to take time to look at the other side of the coin, what it's like on the outside of Jehovah's Witnesses, and face off with their greatest enemies, the apostates. And who better to guide us down that path than the very ones who have traveled that same road themselves, the Dark Lords of the Sith.
At last we will reveal ourselves to the Jedi. At last we will have revenge.
The Jedi shall fall.
Good. Twice the pride, double the fall.
Yes, there is conflict.
If you only knew the power of the dark side.
Yes, the Sith, the dirty half-dozen of the Star Wars universe. By following their stories, feeling their pain, and living their lives, we will understand not only how the Jedi created their own worst nightmare, but how high-control religious groups like the Christian congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses have made boogeymen out of their own brothers. This is how cults create monsters. If you ever want to find out if your church is a cult control center, there's an easy litmus test for you to use. Famous American psychotherapist and cult survivor Professor Stephen Hassan created a specialized guide to help you determine that, called the BITE model. BITE is an acronym for types of control that an organization would use to assert control or authority over a member of the group. It stands for behavior control, information control, thought control, and emotional control. We'll be revisiting each of the other control types later in this video essay, but for now, I think it best to focus on information control. The Jedi were famous for their valuation of both knowledge and wisdom. This is easily seen in the Jedi Archive, a massive library within the Jedi Temple that contained the sum total of all Jedi knowledge in the known galaxy. In a similar vein, Jehovah's Witnesses carry with them a specialized database of all their publications that allows them to answer theological and sometimes scientific questions at the push of a button. They appropriately title it the Watchtower Online Library, after their flagship periodical, the Watchtower Magazine. There, a Jehovah's Witness can access any book, magazine, article, or even webpage created by their parent company, the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, at the simple tap of a finger. Where the two sects converge is that neither of these libraries is quite complete, despite their insistence otherwise.
Impossible. Perhaps the archives are incomplete.
If an item does not appear in our records, it does not exist.
The supreme arrogance of the Jedi Knights is highlighted in the way they protected their most informative pieces of media, the holocrons. Holocrons are special data records that can only be accessed by Jedi Knights. The information held within these devices ranged from basic self-defense techniques to advanced knowledge of the Force, and even the personal protected information of several potential Jedi children. Jehovah's Witnesses and the Watchtower take a similar approach to information collecting and restriction of information. For example, despite claims otherwise, the Watchtower online library actually doesn't contain all the knowledge compiled by the Watchtower. No, it only extends back to the year 1950, at least on the public version of the website. There's a secondary, secret version of the website only available for Bethelites, a special contingent of Jehovah's Witnesses that live in the world headquarters of Jehovah's Witnesses. This version actually stretches the entire history of the Watchtower and even contains some of the religions, we'll call them what they are, more bigoted takes.
The reason is that so far as we are able to judge, coloured people have less education than whites, many of them quite insufficient to permit them to profit by such reading as we have to give forth.
Before we continue, I'd just like to clarify that those were not Ben Ford's thoughts. That was him simply reading an example of Watchtower's historical racism against their own black and brown members. I invite you to, after this video, click on the link in the description box down below to watch Ben's full video on the topic called Bethel's Big Secret. While we're on the subject of big secrets, the Watchtower also maintains another one. As discovered in the infamous Australian Royal Commission hearing during the investigation of Jehovah's Witnesses, the Commission discovered a massive secret database. This database contained the names of over 1,000 perpetrators of child sexual abuse, over half of which actively confessed to the crime, that were not reported to local law enforcement. The victim count was over 1,800. These records were kept secret at Jehovah's Witness World Headquarters since 1950, and that's just the unreported predators in Australia alone. We still can't speculate on how many there are in other parts of the world. And despite these records having been subpoenaed by the Australian government and broadcast on national television, along with some Jehovah's Witness leadership, Jehovah's Witnesses continue to deny their involvement in wrongdoing by lying to their members.
Some examples of their strange teachings are that the faithful slave protects pedophiles, or that slave will exploit you so they can live lives of luxury. Those are both bald-faced lies.
The Jedi was subject to the same attitude, as we saw that even Obi-Wan Kenobi himself denied the truth being told to him by his fellow former Jedi Knight, Count Dooku, aka Darth Tyrannus.
What if I told you that the Republic was now under the control of the Dark Lord of the Sith?
No, that's not possible. The Jedi would be aware of it.
Obi-Wan was wrong. The Jedi had not sensed it, and a Sith Lord had full control of the Senate for a decade prior to the Clone Wars. Dooku had made a genuine attempt to reach his Grand Padawan in hopes of protecting him from what he knew was coming. Instead, Kenobi's rejection of Dooku's offer to destroy Sidious resulted in Dooku escalating the conflict instead. And, like the Sith, apostates have taken to the web and the streets in order to distribute this hidden information to the masses, with mixed results as well. But this extends farther than just internal lies. For example, even friends of the Jedi recognize the bad habit of Jedi to twist the truth to suit their narratives.
Senators, I presume you are acquainted with the collection of half-truths and hyperbole known as Obi-Wan Kenobi.
This habit stuck with Kenobi as he aged, long after the Jedi Order had fallen, and even continued as a dead man. For example, his blatant lie to his own apprentice, Luke Skywalker, about the identity of Darth Vader.
So what I told you was true, from a certain point of view.
Even non-witnesses can see that the religion has been hiding information from the general public for decades. Prominent figures include the Zolkin law firm, who have recovered hundreds of millions of dollars from religious institutions, including Jehovah's Witnesses. And there have been a dozen documentaries made in the same vein, including some with some kinda cool, creepy-looking cartoons. By actively lying to their member base, cults like the Jedi and Jehovah's Witnesses instantly dissolve the very carefully and calculated obedience that they've cultivated over a century. When you've been raised to believe you have the only honest-to-goodness truth for decades, then discover that even one part of it is a lie, it gets you questioning, and that's typically the first step to apostasy.
Lied to me. How many other lies have I been told by the Council?
According to Professor Stephen Reese, a doctor of psychology and psychiatry at the University of Ohio, there are 16 basic human desires. They are as follows: acceptance, curiosity, eating, family, honor, idealism, independence, order, physical activity, power, romance, saving, social contact, social status, tranquility, and vengeance. It took studies with over 6,000 participants for Reese to discern and establish what he calls the Reese profile, a scientific procedure used to measure the basic desires of an individual, and frankly, high control groups seem to go out of their way to crush these very desires. For example, the Jedi Knights of the Old Republic lived by what they called the Jedi Code, an oath and a way of living exclusive to the Jedi.
There is no emotion, there is peace. There is no ignorance, there is knowledge. There is no passion, there is serenity. There is no chaos, there is harmony. There is no death, there is the Force.
This code demands that the Jedi live an emotionless, passionless, attachment-free lifestyle for the duration of their tenure in the Jedi Order, a tenure that lasted from the cradle to the grave. Anakin Skywalker, Jedi Knight and eventual Sith Lord Darth Vader, suffered greatly under this prohibition. He was born and raised a slave on the harsh desert planet of Tatooine. His acceptance was begrudging, as he was seen as property by his contemporaries like the vicious pod racer Sebulba, and his only family was his struggling single mother. And even after he was granted freedom by the Jedi Order, namely Qui-Gon Jinn and his Padawan Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin lost his only ties to family, with his mother Shmi staying home in slavery on Tatooine for years to come after his emancipation. His other ties to family were shaky, as his adoptive father Qui-Gon Jinn was slain almost immediately by Darth Maul, one of Anakin's predecessors amongst the Sith Lords, and his only remaining father figure, Obi-Wan Kenobi, a put-upon 25-year-old, struggled to raise the troubled 10-year-old boy for nearly a decade. As a Jedi Padawan, romance was also strictly forbidden by the Jedi Order, resulting in Skywalker's secret marriage to his childhood friend Padme Amidala, the former queen of the planet Naboo. This marriage would ultimately lead to his downfall, as Padme was expected to die in childbirth, and there was no way for Anakin to support or protect her without divulging a secret that would destroy both of their lives. In a similar vein, Jehovah's Witnesses are beholden to the doctrine of good association. This particular teaching insists that only Jehovah's Witnesses can provide good associations for one another. According to the August 1st, 1967 Watchtower, on page 471, Jehovah's Witnesses would only gather with other Jehovah's Witnesses in their homes or at their place of worship called the Kingdom Hall. This also invites the Jehovah's Witness comparison of bad association. What is bad association? Well, we discuss it at length on this channel, but functionally, according to Jehovah's Witnesses, bad association would be a negative influence on a Jehovah's Witness life. In fact, the article, The Tragic Results of Bad Association, acknowledges that even non-Jehovah's Witnesses with positive traits can be considered bad association, because non-witness companionship, by default, does not improve a witness's relationship with the God Jehovah and his religious followers. Jehovah's Witnesses are always expected to put Jehovah and his organization first in their lives, despite any other basic universal desires or needs they may have. Witnesses have been known to sever family ties, leave employment opportunities, end relationships, and even give up their individual freedoms to support the organization. So blatantly so that Norway has found them in violation of human rights as it pertains to children, and no longer sees Jehovah's Witnesses as a legitimate religion under their law. For example, did you know that Jehovah's Witnesses are taught by the religion to ignore critiques of their religion, even from well-meaning family members?
Mum, I want us to get together, but I won't hear anything negative about my beliefs.
Or that they believe their interpretation of the Bible is more important than two consenting adults fulfilling their need for romance.
I'm one of Jehovah's Witnesses, and we believe the Bible teaches sex is for a man and a woman who are married.
Intolerant people.
Or even won't let their children expand their knowledge through academic activities if it means they may be associating with non-Jehovah's Witness children.
I'm not gonna join the club.
That's my girl.
In place of these individual desires, Jehovah's Witnesses instill the principle of leaning on Jehovah. As told in the October 2013 Watchtower, one witness was quoted saying, "But Jehovah blesses people who lean on them, not in their own understanding," implying that in Jehovah's Witness theology, that God is only good to those who don't show any initiative at all and make no attempts to succeed on their own. In short, these high-control religions steal away any self-actualization that a person can have in themselves, and with that, when a God like Jehovah doesn't come through for them, their trust in that God is shaken, and they can't even find comfort in themselves, potentially leading them away from the organization that failed them.
The council didn't trust me, so how can I trust myself?
On the other side of denying members their basic, universal humanity, there are practices in religions that insist upon painting anyone on the outside of their religion as the worst types of zealots. The Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, live in total fear of apostates. Apostates, according to Jehovah's Witnesses, are murmurers, complainers, and admirers of personalities for the sake of their own benefit. They're often considered to be mentally diseased, traitors to the Jehovah's Witness religion, and are slated for destruction at Armageddon for having the audacity to question Jehovah's Witness teachings. Jehovah's Witnesses are ordered to avoid apostates or anyone associated with them at all costs. This isn't dissimilar to how the Jedi see their enemies, the Sith. They see the Sith as a monolithic, singular entity bound to their passions and arbitrary rules.
Always two there are. No more, no less. A master and an apprentice.
The Jedi were also familiar with the code of the Sith, the antithesis to the code that the Jedi adhered to. Peace is a lie. There is only passion. Through passion, I gain strength. Through strength, I gain power. Through power, I gain victory. Through victory, my chains are broken. The Force shall set me free. The Sith Code openly embraces everything the Jedi Knights decried. Instead of denying their passions, the Sith found passion essential. Their strength came from passion, a strength often greater than that of the Jedi, as some Jedi who fought through the Clone Wars soon learned when facing off against their dark counterparts. This power and the coming victories had a freeing sensation over even enslaved Sith. Darth Maul and his brother Savage Opress found great pleasure in their powers when they took over the great galactic underworld and even conquered the planet of Mandalore with their own two hands. And yes, even former Jehovah's Witnesses participate in and find fulfillment in things that Jehovah's Witnesses prohibit. Apostates were often mocked by wearing trousers to formal events, growing beards on their faces, attending church with family members, participating in electoral politics, consuming birthday cakes, and dressing in silly costumes for Halloween. The freedom afforded to apostates by not being privy to Jehovah's Witness rules and regulations tends to threaten Jehovah's Witnesses. Often, witnesses and their leaders insist that this course of action will lead to unhappiness and anxiety. They use the threat of a looming Armageddon to push their ideals back on witnesses that have left and chosen another religion, or in some cases, no religion at all. This is all despite the fact that most Jehovah's Witness doctrine related to Armageddon has been disproven, as predictions of the end times have failed consistently over the decades. Though, unlike the Sith Lords, Jehovah's Witness apostates aren't held to any specific code. You can go into activism like many other ex-Jehovah's Witnesses in the hopes of granting that same freedom to friends and family, or else entirely walk away from the organization and pretend it doesn't exist. You can choose to celebrate holidays or maintain your distance from them. The freedom to choose that is foreign to those beholden to the Jehovah's Witness congregation.
The dark side of the Force is a pathway to many abilities some consider to be unnatural.
It's hard to be the first one to make a move during a large event. No one wants to take the first slice of pizza at a party or open the first beer at a barbecue or be the first one to ask a question at the end of a lecture. But the bravery of one is often what inspires the rest to open the floodgates. Apostasy is no exception, especially when high-profile members of high-control groups are very quickly turned away. Amongst the Sith Lords, Count Dooku was one of the more powerful ones. But unlike many during the Rule of Two, he also had a history as a Knight of the Republic. Yes, he was a prominent Jedi Master, having trained under the Jedi Grandmaster Yoda and having trained another famous Jedi Master, Qui-Gon Jinn. And while he was loyal to the Jedi Order, he had begun to question their methods and teachings as time went on. Following some questionable missions with his fellow Jedi Knights, the loss of a Padawan to the dark side of the Force, and a few questionable allowances in the government the Jedi was sworn to protect. In fact, in the 2008 novelization of Star Wars The Clone Wars by Karen Traviss, Count Dooku recounts his exact trouble with Master Yoda and the Republic as a whole. The Jedi Order's problem is Yoda. No being can wield that kind of power for centuries without becoming complacent at best or corrupt at worst. He has no idea that it's overtaken him. He no longer sees all the little cumulative evils that the Republic tolerates and fosters, from slavery to endless wars, and he never asks, why are we not acting to stop this? Live alongside corruption for too long, and you no longer notice the stench. Anakin Skywalker, much like Dooku, was the best of the Jedi. Described as the best star pilot in the galaxy, a cunning warrior, and a good friend by his mentor Obi-Wan Kenobi, Skywalker was the hero of the Republic. He was lauded as a powerful Jedi, charming, charismatic, and loved by almost everyone that he met. He lived with the Jedi tenets mostly, and was very effective in his position in the Grand Army of the Republic. But as the days went on, Anakin was subject to more and more of the Jedi's failures. For one, the Council faked the death of Obi-Wan Kenobi in a plot to prevent the assassination of the Chancellor because they didn't trust Anakin's acting. In another instance, fellow Jedi Master Luminara Unduli initially refused to send in a search and rescue team for her and Skywalker's Padawan learners, or apprentice Jedi. Both the girls were teenagers at the time. Skywalker also took issue with the Council using his wife, Padme Amidala, as bait to capture a corrupt separatist politician, and also found that his men were left to suffer at the hands of treacherous turncoat Jedi Master Pong Krell. The Jedi were instrumental in the false charges and expulsion of his student Ahsoka Tano, despite all the evidence being circumstantial and her alibi being airtight. Also, they didn't believe her to be telling the truth, despite the fact that they all have the power to sense intentions. Among a few other conspiracies and cover-ups that Anakin got to witness firsthand from the religion that raised him, it's no surprise that when the choice came down to losing his wife's life for the religion that failed him, or saving her by ending the religion that had abused and bullied him for a decade and a half, that he chose the dark side. While these examples of fallen heroes seem extreme, they actually aren't too out of the ordinary, as there are plenty of real-life examples of prominent religious figures leaving their high-status positions to stand against the very religion they used to champion. An easy place to start is Dr. Rolf Feruli. Feruli was an assistant professor at the University of Oslo for 12 years before his retirement. More surprisingly, he had been an active Jehovah's Witness elder for nearly 56 years, having also served as a circuit and district overseer during his tenure. For my Catholic viewers, that would be the rough equivalent of working as a priest, then being promoted to bishop. And during his career, he was a great proponent of Jehovah's Witness teachings, though they weren't a fan of his. Jehovah's Witnesses are well known for their stance against higher education.
Has the governing body changed its position regarding the pursuit of higher secular education? No. We feel that all of the cautions that we have addressed in the past are still valid.
Though the second that Dr. Ferrulli published a book titled My Beloved Religion and the Governing Body, in which he critically looks into the authority of Jehovah's Witness leadership, that was the moment he was ousted from the religion. Barbara Anderson was another surprisingly powerful Jehovah's Witness who turned her back on the religion after questioning policies. Anderson was a practicing Jehovah's Witness for over 40 years, and for a decade before she left the religion, she served at the Jehovah's Witness World Headquarters in Brooklyn, New York. At the pinnacle of her JW career, Anderson was a researcher for Jehovah's Witness's signature magazine, The Awake magazine. Ironically, this research for The Awake would ultimately lead to a rude awakening for Barbara herself.
The conclusion of my stay was spent in doing research, extensive research about the issue, which was becoming a serious problem within the religion. It was child sexual abuse, and it was something that was going on throughout the entire world.
This shocking discovery that Jehovah's Witnesses were covering up over 23,000 and counting individual child predators was more than enough to change Barbara and her husband Joe's mind. Since then, Anderson has struck back against the Watchtower and Jehovah's Witnesses in several ways in service of the Jehovah's Witness children they've demonstrably failed. In addition to hosting several damning Jehovah's Witness documents for the public to see on watchtowerdocuments.org, which feature hundreds of documents not available to Jehovah's Witnesses and the general public through their normal website, she also founded the nonprofit scars.org, a charity that lobbies for stronger mandatory reporting laws and to protect children from further abuse at the hands of Jehovah's Witnesses and any other organization. Though her activism hasn't stopped there, Anderson continues to support investigations and exposés of the Watchtower and their insufficient child safeguarding policies. Finally, perhaps the most high-profile apostate of all time, Raymond Franz. If there was a real-life analog to Count Dooku, it would be him. Franz wasn't a doctor or a researcher. Instead, he was actually a member of the Jehovah's Witness governing body. The governing body would be analogous to the Jedi Council in Star Wars, in that they interpret the doctrine, control the teachings, and guide the work of Jehovah's Witnesses worldwide. For a Catholic, you could call the governing body a council of popes, or I guess a council of archbishops, because I'm certain at least one of you is going to be technical in the comments. That said, Franz served on the body for nearly a decade, helping create and refine teachings for the millions of Jehovah's Witnesses under his influence. Though, ironically, after serving in every possible capacity he could for the religion, as an elder, a missionary, and a full-time servant, it was his appointment to the governing body as an anointed future king priest that would be his downfall in the religion. The most famous ex-Jehovah's Witness publication, Crisis of Conscience, details Franz's titular crisis in his own words. The great enemy of the truth is very often not the lie, deliberate, contrived, and dishonest, but the myth, persistent, persuasive, and unrealistic. I now began to realize how large a measure of what I had based my entire adult life course on was just that. A myth, persistent, persuasive, and unrealistic. Raymond Franz, now seeing how the sausage was made, for lack of a better term, was disillusioned. What he thought was Holy Spirit-guided work turned out to be frustrating human dogma, a dogma he could not suffer. It wasn't long after that he stepped down from his position in 1979, and a mere 2 years later, he was unceremoniously hunted down and spiritually executed via disfellowshipping. After that, Franz wrote 2 tell-all memoirs about his experience as a Jehovah's Witness elder and leader, Crisis of Conscience and the Spiritual Successor, In Search of Christian Freedom, detailed not only Franz's involvement in the religion, but shed a light on the internal discord and strife that was hidden beneath the surface. Though they all contribute to the downfall of the Watchtower for different reasons and in different ways, it's clear that these disillusioned heroes of Jehovah could see the cracks in this tower's foundation, even under the brightest of new light.
Jedi, their order is a fading light in the dark, corrupt and arrogant.
Phobia indoctrination, according to the APA, is a very powerful tool used by high control groups to control the behavior of their members. According to Stephen Hassan's BITE model, addressed early in the video, instilling an us versus them mentality in a cult member is a powerful thought-stopping technique. While for the most part this is based on control, cult leaders can use this indoctrination along with current events to further their case. For example, in certain countries like North Korea and Russia, Jehovah's Witnesses are considered to be what's called under ban. This means that members of the religion can't practice as freely as they would here in the States, Oz, the UK, Canada, or most other North American and European countries. In fact, there are historical and modern precedents for Jehovah's Witnesses to be arrested or even lose their lives over their religion. The Jedi during the Clone Wars faced a similar issue, being declared enemies of several planetary and interstellar governments. The Separatists and eventually the Galactic Empire declared them illegal and gave ordinary citizens great incentive to go along with these bans.
Well, now that you mention it, the Separatists are paying 1 million credits ahead for a Jedi.
Though it's notable in both cases that Jehovah's Witnesses and the Jedi bore no ill will towards outsiders in these instances. Jehovah's Witnesses take a path of non-violence and therefore wouldn't attack these violators of human rights. Nor did the Jedi go out of their way to take revenge on bounty hunters like Cad Bane or space pirates like Hondo Ohnaka. In fact, witnesses and Jedi alike would often ally with their adversaries in hopes of building bonds, or in the witnesses' case, converting them to the religion through what they call a good witness.
Remember, when we go door to door, people see us, and good behavior gives a good witness.
But there are notable exceptions to these rules. For the Jedi, of course, they had an on-site attitude with their ancient enemies, the Dark Lords of the Sith. At any opportunity, a Jedi would draw their lightsaber in order to slay a Sith Lord. Most would see the Sith as animals, as Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin Skywalker immediately deemed Sith acolyte Savage Opress a monster during their first meeting. Master Windu, upon finding out that Chancellor Sheev Palpatine was a Sith Lord, moved to arrest and later execute Darth Sidious immediately. It's worth noting that he wasn't interested in a fair fight, as he brought 3 of his fellow Jedi Council members with him in order to immediately overpower Sidious. What's more notable is that Asajj Ventress, Sith acolyte and known Separatist war criminal, had a very antagonistic relationship with the Jedi, especially the master-student chain of Obi-Wan Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker, and Ahsoka Tano. Though after her expulsion from the Sith Lords, Skywalker, Kenobi, and Tano all had relatively friendly business dealings with her that resulted in relatively low levels of animosity and very little violence. Well, in comparison to their previous encounters. In fact, the Jedi teamed up with their old arch-nemesis a number of times in service of a single goal, defeating their Sith adversaries like Darth Maul and Darth Tyrannus, leading any reasonable individual to understand that their disagreement was purely with her religious beliefs, and they apparently took no issue with her numerous violations of the Yavin Code, aka the Star Wars version of the Geneva Convention. Jehovah's Witnesses, while non-violent, are more than willing to fight their former members in another way. They shun former members. Shunning in Jehovah's Witness parlance means that they ignore, shut down, and pretend the person doesn't exist. This isn't strictly limited to ex-Jehovah's Witness apostates, but also extends to other former witnesses who have been forcibly removed from the faith, but might still believe in the tenets, but we'll get to that later. Contrary to what they claim on their website, Jehovah's Witnesses actually are taught to shun former members. And this isn't a secret, they've literally posted this on their website. For example, in questions from readers in the March 1st, 1984 Watchtower, a reader asks about apostates. The Watchtower, in no uncertain terms, other apostates as not our sort, insist that they've got God's disapproval and should actively be shunned by loyal Christians. Loyal Christians, in this case, meaning active, practicing Jehovah's Witnesses. And while Jehovah's Witnesses don't see this as harm, the actual doctors at the CDC can demonstrate the health risks associated with being socially isolated through practices like shunning. A shunned individual has a higher risk of heart disease, diabetes, depression, anxiety, self-harm, and even early death, amongst other comorbidities. So should a loyal Jehovah's Witness become an apostate, they can say goodbye to their social support networks and prepare to be marginalized and discriminated against in the very religion they championed for so long. The Jedi Order and the Christian Congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses have an easy time performing these tasks as they directly associate these individual apostates as being the personifications of evil. The Sith, for example, are explicitly aligned with the dark side of the Force, the dark side being considered the perversion of the will of the Force, a corruption, and unnatural. The Jedi see the willful alignment and use of this aspect of the Force as an affront to life itself, and have dedicated themselves to eliminating it in order to restore balance. In a similar manner, Jehovah's Witnesses are convinced that any apostate is under the direct influence of Satan the Devil, ancient enemy of their God Jehovah. According to the May-June 2023 Life and Ministry Meeting Workbook, apostates are considered poison, and they should never have their opinions read, repeated, or even replied to.
Treat them as the poison they are.
With rhetoric as abusive, dehumanizing, and othering as this, it's no wonder that apostates from high-control religious groups develop such a loathing for their former religion, and can even suffer from a deep self-loathing as they deconstruct.
I will do such terrible things.
The most important thing to remember about apostasy is that every apostate has to have an origin. Whether an apostate takes on another religion or abandons their faith in general, they have one thing in common. They originated with a religion, and that was a religion they escaped from, whether they wanted to or not. This time, starting with the Star Wars universe, the Jedi quite literally created the Sith. Nearly 7,000 years before the Battle of Yavin, the Jedi had just finished either their third or fourth schism in the religion, where the Jedi aligned with the light all but eradicated the Jedi aligned with the dark. The Jedi, in their arrogance and self-righteousness, rather than help rehabilitate their old colleagues, elected to commission a galleon to send the surviving Dark Jedi into the darkest regions of the galaxy, unarmed, hoping they would contemplate the error of their ways. Yes, this is literally the plot to Mystery Science Theater 3000 in that, quote, "Their bosses didn't like him so they shot him into space." But rather than being sent cheesy movies, the Dark Jedi eventually crashed on the planet Korriban, where they met the ancient Sith civilization. The Sith species at that point were an ancient species that worshipped the dark side of the Force, coincidentally having just fought a civil war themselves at the same time the Jedi had. The Sith people not only welcomed these Dark Jedi, but eventually intertwined with them, marrying, having children, and intermingling with one another. Eventually, the Dark Jedi and the Sith species became the Sith Lords. These Sith Lords integrated the primitive worship of the dark side into their already modified, darkened versions of Jedi teachings, and thus a new religion was born. So while Jedi teachings were the basis of the Sith religion, not all Jedi are Sith, though all practicing Sith, to an extent, are technically Jedi. Ex-Jehovah's Witnesses usually come from one of two sources. They'll either become XJWs by choice or by force. By choice, they follow a process called disassociation. Disassociation is the willing resignation from the Christian congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses. This is usually achieved by writing a letter in a formal sense, or can be achieved by slowly and formally withdrawing from the religion on your own in a process known as fading. The other way is through disfellowshipping. Disfellowshipping is when the Jehovah's Witness leadership in a congregation expels another member for what they call a serious sin. Examples of a serious sin include crimes, infidelity, and in this case, disagreeing with Jehovah's Witness doctrine and theology, better known as apostasy. Regardless of the reason, an ex-Jehovah's Witness is treated the same way either way. In the article, We Show Love by Supporting Jehovah's Discipline, Jehovah's Witnesses are instructed to shun both disfellowshipped and disassociated former members, lest they interfere with Jehovah's discipline, or else they too would be subject to similar discipline. Both the Witnesses and the Jedi see their respective direct apostates in ex-Jehovah's Witnesses and the Sith differently than they see other religions. While other dark sects like the Night Sisters for the Jedi Order, or Christian sects like the Latter-day Saints aren't considered the true religion by either the Jedi or the Witnesses, they're more open to interactions with them, likely because of their own doctrine. The Jehovah's Witnesses, for example, believe they need to preach to everyone who hasn't had an opportunity to learn the word of their God Jehovah, no matter their previous affiliation, whereas they believe an apostate has already had that opportunity and has set themselves up for destruction at the day of judgment known as Armageddon. The Jedi, on the other hand, are willing to negotiate with the Night Sisters for unknown reasons, but are instructed to destroy a Sith on sight, like an intergalactic gang war. And while they're willing to accept the surrender of a Sith and take them into custody, this is usually only when the opportunity to destroy them isn't an option. Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan Kenobi didn't exchange a word with Darth Maul, Anakin never spoke to Ventress during their first meeting, and Yoda ransacked Palpatine's office. No famous Jedi compassion there, and no hate like Jehovah's Witness loving discipline.
Destroy the Sith. We must.
The toughest part of leaving the religion of your youth is figuring out what to do next, and both ex-Jehovah's Witness apostates and Jedi apostates struggle with this aspect of life after religion. An ex-Jehovah's Witness, for example, may have their faith shaken permanently and cut themselves off from religion entirely. We see an example of this when Luke Skywalker exiled himself to Acto during The Last Jedi in the sequel trilogy. Kyle Katarn, a Jedi Knight from the Dark Forces series of novels and games, did the same after a brush with the dark side during an adventure on Dromund Kaas. Another path for an ex-witness may be to fall headfirst into another cult. According to the National Library of Medicine, risk factors include tenuous family relationships, history of neglect, intolerable economic conditions, and emotional vulnerability, among many other risk factors. We can see this in a number of Sith Lords and their acolytes. Darth Maul, for example, was sold to the Sith by his mother as a sacrifice for the clan, and then trained in their ways. Maul was considered an expendable asset and ultimately was discarded and replaced after his failure on Naboo. Savage Opress, Darth Maul's brother, was also sold into slavery to the Sith to be used as an instrument of revenge, and upon his escape from the Sith, he joined his brother in creating a Sith gang and taking over another cult, the Death Watch Mandalorians. Asajj Ventress, the one who arranged for Savage to be sold to the Sith, was ironically sold into slavery herself by her den mother, Mother Talzin, who, also ironically, was the mother of Darth Maul. Ventress worked as a slave for pirates for much of her young childhood, before being raised as a Boken Jedi Knight, or a Jedi raised outside of the temple, after the Jedi eradicated the pirates she was serving. And when that Jedi Master died, she found herself in the service of Count Dooku and dedicated her life to him. Unlike Savage and Maul, Ventress, who was generally abused, had no resources, and no family to fall back on, found herself floating from master to master, whether they were benevolent or not. And we can never forget to address the elephant in the room, the one and only Darth Vader. Having been born a slave and raised at a very late age in the Jedi Temple, the young Anakin Skywalker was under constant scrutiny and frequently bullied. He was cut off from the only family he knew, his own mother, and his other social bonds were tenuous, as if he got too close, he would risk his career as a Jedi. Not free to create bonds or become stable in his emotions, it's no wonder the charismatic Sheev Palpatine, aka Darth Sidious, being Anakin's only positive reinforcement, was able to manipulate him into joining the Sith immediately after betraying the Jedi. Ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, however, do have a third option. They can mold their spirituality their way. Ahsoka Tano, for example, after being expelled from the Jedi Order and extradited on charges for a crime she didn't commit, decided to leave the religion on her own terms afterwards. And while she struggled during the rise of the Empire, she did make friends and build bonds wherever she went. After some time, she found herself practicing her Jedi arts again, but in her own way, on her own terms, even going so far as to support and teach a new generation of potential Jedi, like Din Grogu, Sabine Wren, and Ezra Bridger. In the real world, former Jehovah's Witnesses won't have the luxury of being able to prove which religion is the right one simply on looks. We can't shoot lightning from our fingers, push or pull objects with our minds, or bounce lasers away with more lasers. But what we can do is vet and sniff test any new ideology that we're interested in before we make a commitment. Returning to Dr. Hassan's BITE model, it's good to make considerations before committing to a new way of life. I'll give a few examples of red flags to watch out for with the new group. Starting with behavior control. Does this new group regulate how I live my life? Demand I ask for permission before a decision, restrict how and what activities I do for leisure, plan my diet, have a suspiciously strict dress code, or determine who I hang out with. With information control, does this new group discourage research using any material but their own in-house material? Do they withhold information or insist you wait for a question's answer until the time is right? Do they want you to keep tabs on your peers? Do they demand confession regularly? Are they constantly showing you newsletters, magazines, videos, or even podcasts? Next, with thought control, do they change your name or title? Do they only want you to think positively and condescend your negative thoughts? Do they react well to criticism, even of the constructive kind? Do they make you chant? How do they feel about critical questions about the organization? And finally, with emotional control, do they narrow down the range of acceptable feelings? Do they redirect blame for problems to individuals rather than systems? Do they add to your fears? And are confessions public rituals? There's more nuance to it than a simple checklist, but it's a good way to start analyzing groups that you've become a part of. If nothing else, the best way to see if you're joining a cult is to see how your group treats its former members.
I understand wanting to walk away from the order.
Apostasy isn't an easy thing to come to terms with when a religion has been such a big part of your life. But, given what we've learned today, it's easy to conclude one thing about it. These religions, be they the Jedi or Jehovah's Witnesses, fail their members daily. One quick search on TikTok or YouTube will show you hundreds of thousands of millions who have walked away from Jehovah's Witnesses and their failings, whether they were failed by false predictions of the end times, or if a duty of care was neglected for a child, or even when the watchtower shirked their responsibilities of ensuring their fellows get appropriate medical care. It's clear that the Christian congregation of Jehovah's Witnesses, along with the Watchtower Bible and Tract Society, and most importantly, their governing body, have a century-old record of failures. I won't tell you where to go when you leave the Watchtower, nor will I tell you if it's even the best idea to leave Watchtower. Those choices, if they're applicable, are yours to make. Though if I may make a suggestion, I suggest we take a page out of the Sith's book and follow passions. Through my passion, I expand my knowledge. Through my knowledge, I improve my behavior. Through improved behavior, I gain information. With more information, my thoughts are free. With freedom of thought, my emotions are mine alone. I am more like me. But that's just how I see things. What, my ExJW agents, do you think? Whatever your thoughts may be, I insist that we don't control them. I'd rather read them in the comments down below. And until next time, remember, the elders may be watching you, but Darth Magog is watching the Watchtower.